is this just fantasy or is this Briar issue 2? Briar is, of course, one of my favorite comics that is out there on the market today, and I think it was very recently announced, like the creative team for the next volume, maybe, or just the forthcoming issues, and it's not the same artist, which is a shame because I really really love this artist, but the world is so rich and so interesting that I'm fine with going with it because the new artist seems like a good fit for the material, and they seem like they are doing good with the material. But this is issue 2. This is Christopher Cantwell and German Garcia, who is just fantastic. And just as a reminder, so Briar is a retelling of the Sleeping Beauty story, or I wouldn't say necessarily retelling, but it's using Sleeping Beauty as the framework for their fantasy story. So here we have our Briar Rose here, our Sleeping Beauty, and next to her is her new companion, who I believe goes by Spider. And they're surrounded by these witchy ladies, these swampy witchy ladies, and they're going to feature prominently in this issue. So just as a little quick recap, the last issue, Briar Rose, basically nobody woke her up, and she's been asleep for a century, and when she wakes up, the world is completely different. It's much more brutal and hostile, and it's just, yeah, completely changed. It's a completely different world. And also the kind of magical sisterhood, in the short story, in the fairy tale, sometimes they're fairies or they're fairy godmothers or they're witches. In any case, the women that bestowed upon her gifts, including the one that cursed her to sleep forever, or for a long time, they've kind of vanished, and she's kind of looking for them as a means of explaining what's going on or what's happened, because she's supposed to be important because she's been endowed with kind of magical abilities or just magical importance, but she doesn't have any idea what that means, and so we're going to figure that out. And I'm mostly going to be gushing about the art and just like the kind of magic concepts in here. So right away, we're having this eerie, like, spell being cast, and we're using a spindle, this creepy looking spindle from a spinning wheel with an eye on it, and it's being like hammered into somebody's arm or hand, and like the blood seems significant to it, and it's got an eye on it. This lady's arm is covered in nails, filled with nails, I should say. Off to a great start. This is just fantastic, like, kind of imagery, and it's just got this eerie, dark magicness to it. And this is I forget her name. I'll have to double check on it, but this is the witch or the fairy or the whatever that cursed Briar Rose in the first place, and I think she's aware that Briar Rose is awake, and so she's got her kind of huntsman / tracker character to find her. And to find her, she's using this like spindle. She's jamming it into his forehead, and it's got like an extra eye on it. And I guess, yeah, it's meant to connect her with Briar Rose. And that's just a fantastic concept. I love the design of this character. He's like, kind of classic sinister. I just also love her design. There's great character design throughout, and the world is gorgeously rendered by German Garcia. But basically, here's our threat. These people are gonna be coming for Briar Rose to hunt her down, and then from here we cut to what Briar and Spider are up to, and I love that there's this kind of forlorn air for Briar Rose because she is like, this world doesn't look anything like it used to be, and it's kind of grosser and darker and everything, and so she's kind of remembering what it used to be like, and she's kind of it's depressing, and it's depressing to see what the world has become. And so right here she kind of almost gives up in this swamp. And I also love that there's this kind of dichotomy between how Briar Rose speaks and how contemporary people speak, or Spider speaks, because Briar kind of has this archaic way of speaking. I sink now, I perish. Farewell, blue companion. And she's just a little bit more guttural with how she speaks. But we move quickly. I mean, look at how beautifully the swamp is rendered. We see this great structure. I love the giant structure. Giant structures are a must in every fantasy story. You just gotta do it. And of course, everywhere she just gets attacked, and like, things are just horrible. And she gets hit with an arrow here, and this like kind of swamp witch lady shows up. And again, just I love the mark making, and Matt Lopez's color is also absolutely gorgeous. He's really working really well with the artist here, German Garcia. They're both artists, absolutely. Color artist and ink artist here. And I just love these swamp witches, but they're intruding, and so they kind of have to make their case, and then Briar Rose kind of explains who she is, naming things that basically are forgotten to a very few. And I think they're kind of part of like a cult to the old, like, fairy mothers or fairy godmothers, fairy names, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. If you know the story. And I just love, they're kind of this like kind of witch coven cult kind of based on that. But then, they get the idea, and there's a whole bunch of them. And, it seems like a good thing because they're like, oh, okay, well, these people know what she is, and you be a friend of this bog and its quaggy coven. Just fun words, folks. Fun words. I love the whole system of made up words for fantasy stories. Quaggy, it's great. And then instead of like a beautiful like tree focused beautiful forest, they are glomming through a swamp. I love this shot, honestly. Just the hint of all these folks back there. It's really well done. I love that they're aware of, I guess, Sleeping Beauty, but they call her the Sleeping Fool, and they kind of connect her to, I guess, what, like, the typical fairy tale depiction of her, and that she's just like, oh, I'm just a pretty girl, and she's helpless, and that she just dreams until somebody wakes her up. And we don't know who's woken her up yet. Just to be clear. Then we're introduced to another member of our core group in Roop, who's kind of a young acolyte, like witch boy, and who's kind of everybody kind of bullies him, pushes him around. And so here we're getting kind of the the pursuing of Briar by our our active villain here, even if he's not the lead villain. And this is the tavern where she kind of stumbled through in the first issue. So he's already pretty hot on the trail. And here's where we kind of learn more about the lore of the world and just how, which is basically what happened, in that all of the other fairy mothers or witches or whatever were basically killed, and by the one evil one, and so she's the only one that's left, and potentially, or Briar may be the only one that can stop her. So it's a good setup for a fantasy story, and it's sort of chosen one-y, but not explicitly like it's foretold that you're gonna do this. It's just that she maybe their best hope for it, because she's kind of she has the last kind of tenuous connection to like the good magic that isn't in the world anymore. Yeah, and so they are essentially trying to encourage her that like it's your true calling. We're gonna help you figure it out, and so you got to be with us. And she's just still feels very lost. Again, I said it last time we talked about this, but I love how gaunt that she's drawn, because she looked practically skeletal when we first saw her, and so because she's just been lying there like a fucking corpse. I don't know. There's all these little panels in here where we just get little gorgeous bits of line work. I love all this swampy shit on them. It's fantastic. It's great for the atmosphere. Here's where we get into where she's staying, and whenever he gets to draw all this like natural stuff, I just kind of sit and just stare at it, because I just love how like the kind of marks that he makes. Really love it. And she's kicking back, she's having a good time, and we're gonna get some bonding with our folks here. I find we have Roop here, who they're the only ones that are being nice to him, which I think is fair. So, just a real gross thing here. Our bad guy has made like a tire or a wheel out of, I'm guessing, several people, and like lit it on fire and is just sending it rolling, and that's just gross and screwed up. And but Roop here, he's kind of opening up to them, and how he's basically just treated horribly by everybody, and how he's learning, he's trying to learn spells, but they're not teaching him very well, or they're not teaching him much at all. And he wants to learn necromancy, which that's a cool but scary ability. I love how her reaction is fiendish, and Spider's is interesting. And we're just learning a little bit more about each other. Again, I want you to read it. That's why I'm kind of not, taking a very completist approach with covering the story here, just because I want y'all to pick this up. It is in trade, after all, right now, so you can find the trade of this. We learn a bit about why Spider's not with her own people, who she kind of comes from the north, kind of wintry folks, and she was supposed to kill a baby, and she couldn't kill a baby, and so she was exiled. And you know what? That's a pretty good reason to be killed, or to not. It's a pretty good reason to be exiled. And then we have this really cool cross panel where we see his and her connection with each other. And this is how he's able to find where she is. And I think, yeah, like there's just cool terminology. They call her the sleepwalker. She was sleeping a long time and she's still alive. And yeah, but yeah, the whole idea is that he's got to kill her. And then when they wake up, Briar is like, I think I just gotta work with these ladies because this is the only chance I have at figuring out who I'm supposed to be. And Spider is like, nah, you should figure it out for yourself because I don't trust these people because it's their apparatus that failed. It's their world that failed. But then, Briar is pretty committed to it until she notices that Roop is going to be essentially a human sacrifice for her initiation. And I just love that this is kind of a turn here where she just slaps the shit out of this witch and decides that, yeah, they're going to go their own way. Yeah. I really like the dialogue. I don't want to be focusing in on it too much, but I just think it's got a good sense of humor. It hums through the exposition in an interesting way, and I just also really like the characters. And yeah, so they're fleeing these witches, but just as they're fleeing these witches, this motherfucker shows up, and he is not not pleased, and that he's not. It's not great that he's that close. So that, I believe, is that. And that's it, baby. Really cool last panel there. Yeah, it's so one thing I love about it is like German Garcia has definitely got a digital workflow, or at the very least there's inking happening digitally. Just because the way certain things are done, it's like that would be very difficult to do. Not impossible, but very difficult to do on paper. And not that it isn't possible. In fact, I'd be curious to see if it is all done on paper. But I feel like there's got to be some part of it that's digital and not just the coloring. And I really love it. I love his approach to character design and everything. Everything feels like it fits together, except for her like dress. Feels like it comes from a different place, different era, which fits. And yeah, it's a fun high fantasy take on a fairy tale, and I would love to see more of those, frankly. I think that sounds like a very fun and exciting prospect, is kind of high fantasy reissues of some of these stories. And I know that technically The Witcher's sort of like that. Like the writer of The Witcher, he borrows and uses a lot of fairy tales in his stories, which may sound ridiculous to you until you read something like Hans the Hedgehog, and then get to that part of either the show or the books, and you're like, hey, there's a hedgehog man. Anyway, enough of that. This is Briar issue 2. I love it, and I love it as it continues. I love it till the end of its first story arc, and I am excited for more Briar this coming summer. And my plan is to have covered the first 4 issues of Briar before that, so then I can just start covering the new ones. But anyway, this has been one of my favorite contemporary comics out there on the stands. And one of your new favorites is going to be Side Questers. This is issue 1 of Side Questers. This is my book, and it's called Fetch Me the whole volume, you could say, is called Fetch Me the Lizard Man. So you can buy, one issue to test it out, or if you trust me well enough to tell a good story, I also have a volume 1 that covers the first 8 issues and is the first complete story arc for my fantasy world. And along with that are my Haxan anthologies, which I'm working on volume 3 right now. But these are a series of short stories that deal with magic users in some way, but they all fit in the same world as Side Questers. And each of these is like 60 pages of short stories. This one's got 4 short stories. This one's got 3. And you can buy all of this on my website. And if you like more traditional comic booky stuff, you might like 3-Panel Origin, which is my weekly webcomic where I create a character and tell their origin in 3 panels. But sometimes, in fact, most of the time, it's kind of awkward and silly, like, say, I don't know, the Jell-O that was left in the back of the fridge mutates into a giant Jell-O monster, hence Jell-O mold. So this is the collected first 3 years in print format. You can buy that on my website, as well as this book of short stories set in that world. And it's all kind of silly superhero action and fun. And, it's a barrel of laughs. That is all. That is Briar.